Well, today I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I say that a lot, but I really mean it today. It's with Erica Bonham, and she is a queer identified licensed therapist in the state of Colorado. I had never heard that terminology before. And
Mhm.
a trained ketamine assisted psychotherapist. This is something new. And she is an expert on polyvagal system regulation, attachment repair, religious trauma, abuse recovery, and trauma related to systemic oppression. Well, I could fit into some of those categories. So, hello, Erica, and
Hello, thank
I
you.
hope you're as excited to be here as I am.
I am. I'm truly really honored and I'm just, yeah, there's nowhere else I want to be in this particular
Oh, good.
moment
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
love doing the show because I meet such interesting people, and I learn oh, all kinds of things. And sometimes I even give out some information that's helpful to others. So.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great podcast. So I appreciate the work you're doing in the world, my dear
Oh,
human.
thank you. Thank you. So, what inspired you to specialize in trauma recovery, particularly in the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, so I mean, I really think I came to this work. So I'm adopted, but the
Mhm.
mom that raised me, who was really my person, she died 10 years ago, but she was my love, my primary attachment.
Yeah.
And she came from a very abusive family, alcoholic family, childhood sexual trauma. And so I think I was sort of called into this life as a therapist. And as I got older, I would be the first person that people would tell their sexual abuse histories to, or I would be the first person that they disclosed a sexual assault to. And so, after 20 years of waiting tables, I decided to finally go back to grad school and do something with what felt like a natural kind of calling.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I'm a person that can just hold the messiness of human life, and hopefully people experience me as open and non-judgmental, and that's just what I hold. And I believe that when we walk through our pain, when we walk through our shadow, we really understand that that is not who we are. Of course, it shapes us, it impacts us, um, but that doesn't get to define you. That doesn't get to hold power over you forever. And nobody gets to take away what is always and already true, which is that you are enough and lovable and worthy and
Yeah.
divinely connected to every other living thing on this planet, just
I
as you
always say
are.
to my grandkids, I'm a truth teller, because I'll say something, they'll go, Nanny, and I go, hey, I tell the truth, good or
Hmm.
bad.
That's
But
right.
I really believe like there's a human design in that we have a mission and purpose in life, but we don't know what it is at first, you know.
Yeah, right.
So when we go through, and I will say the first half, well, not half, but 40 years of my life, I'm 76, so it's not quite half. So that first part of my life was so horrible that I never thought that I had a purpose, a mission, or that I was going to have self-fulfillment. Okay.
Right.
And real briefly, I'll just mention because it was a turning point for me when a therapist told me about Maslow's hierarchy of
Mhm.
self-actualization. And he told me, you should be in college and you're a very smart girl. And instead, you're a single mother of two children trying to scrape together food and keep a roof over their head. And that's like the first step of survival. So
Right.
the other four steps to get you up to your potential, how am I ever going to get there? Right. And that turned a light bulb. And I'll tell you what, within 2 weeks, I got a divorce and entered college.
Good for you. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that was in 1977.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. But
Yeah.
that's important, see, and then all those things I went through the first half of my life, as I grew spiritually, emotionally, intelligently, I started to see how I could help other people with
Yeah.
that. So, let's talk about, what's polyvagal? I'm not even saying it right.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So
Polyvagal.
polyvagal. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we have our vagus nerve, right? The vagus
Yeah.
nerve runs from our brainstem to our gut, and it actually runs through major organs. It affects our digestion, it affects our heart rate. And so, you know, how do you feel about cussing on your podcast? Would you rather
Oh,
me
God, go
not?
ahead. No
Okay.
problem.
So my sort of catchphrase is, if you will, is trauma doesn't give a shit what you know.
Yeah.
And that means that we can know in our thinking brains, right? In our
Yes.
cognitive mind,
Yeah.
we can understand that, the abuse wasn't our fault, or that we're not just unworthy pieces of shit, or we can know that certain truths. But this stuff gets stored in the lower levels of the brain, and the vagus nerve does not connect to your frontal lobes. So you can think and you can know all kinds of things, but in some way it's about 25% effective. 75% of what happens in the nervous system is happening involving the vagus nerve. And so
And
polyvagal
yeah.
theory
Okay.
involves body work. It involves, bringing in the nervous system, toning the vagus
Yes.
nerve so that it becomes stronger and our
Yeah.
nervous systems actually have more capacity. But it also involves attachment and attunement, compassion, both with ourselves, because the relationship that we have with ourselves is the one that we have the most control over, right? So if we can learn to be that healthy, attuned adult self that we did not get, maybe as a
Yeah.
child, that we can learn to be that for those younger parts of ourselves, for those more wounded parts of ourselves, for those more protective, spiky leather jacket parts of ourselves.
Yeah. I
And
have.
we can attune to that, but we can also develop relationships with other humans that can offer that too. And we actually learn to regulate our nervous systems through healthy attunement and attachment and resonance, right?
Now,
So it's,
not to go too far off subject,
yeah, it's
it
okay.
kind of it kind of connects. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score.
Of course.
Of
Yes.
course,
Yes.
you know about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I, when I heard about that and I read it and I went, I have autoimmune disease, I have small fiber neuropathy, I have all these things that
Right.
I realize now that were caused by all the trauma in the first part of my life.
Right. Right.
I wasn't born with them. The body keeps the score. So that
Right.
trauma has to show up in your body somewhere. And like you said, it's not always your mind. Now, mental illness has a different story. I'm just talking about the actual effect it has on the total body.
Right.
And you also talked, and I kind of cut you off before when you start talking about your adopted mother. Um, the LGBTQ community, you focus on that.
Yes. Yeah. So my partner's a woman. I identify as a queer identified therapist. So that term, a lot of people in the older generation are like, "Ooh, queer, that was like a bad word, that was not a nice word." And we've sort of reclaimed it because we don't,
Yes,
a lot of us don't really feel like we fit in lesbian or bisexual or
exactly.
whatever. So it it
Yes,
it
yes,
has this more broad term
yes.
and or more broad inclusivity maybe,
Yeah,
and it's a
yeah.
reclamation of that
I
word.
like
So
it.
yeah.
Yeah, we used to say gay in the
Yeah.
70s. So, like I was, a young woman in the 70s when disco and everything, and I had a ton of gay friends. I actually bartended in a gay bar,
Fun. I
and
love
they
that.
were they were my best friends. I love
Yeah.
gay guys. I do.
Yeah.
I think they
Yeah.
make the best friends.
They often
But
do. They often do.
yeah.
And gay men can also be jerks, and just like
Oh,
everybody
just
can
like
be
any
jerks,
other
and
gay. I've met
the gay
some.
community has trauma, and sometimes that
Yes.
manifests in not so
Oh,
pretty
yes.
ways, right?
Yes, but I was married to my second husband, who was Mr. Macho Man, and we were at the club, you know, and he was the bouncer, so that tells you how big and tough he thought he was. And this guy that liked to dress as a woman when he went to the disco. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd have nail polish on everything. And, I knew him that way. And he'd use a different name that when he's dressed like that. And we went to the ladies' room, and this girl comes in the ladies' room and she goes, "Who's Marie?" Well, that was the name I used then. I said, "I am." "Well, you better get out of here because this guy out here is having a fit." I said, "What the heck?" So I go, "What's going on?" "You're in the bathroom with a man."
Mm.
And I said, "She's not a man tonight.
No,
She's
no.
embracing being a woman." Like then it was, straight men didn't get it at all, at
Yeah,
all.
well, I mean, we can really name that our trans siblings and trans community is really feeling some very precarious and scary things right now. So I am
Yes, you are.
sending love out to my trans community right now, and
Yeah,
just we're
because
not alone, and we
no,
will heal our collective wounding. We
yes,
will.
we're going to be okay. Because, and I say we. 2 years ago, I was having lunch with a friend of mine who was gay and black, and I said to him, I said, "Ewell, we're in trouble." I said, "Women, people of color, and the gay community, we're really in trouble. I see things going backwards."
Mm.
Because don't forget, I was a young woman in the 60s and 70s when we were fighting for these rights, gay rights, women's rights,
Mhm,
black rights,
mhm.
and they're being taken away. I'm
They
like,
are, but we're
"Ah,
not going anywhere, okay?
we're
The
not going
world,
anywhere."
this is the last gasp of the old paradigm, and they know they are dying. They
Yeah,
know that
yeah,
paradigm is dying, and they are throwing as much spaghetti at the wall.
yeah.
And I'm not trying to minimize the danger that has a very real impact on
Yeah.
people, but the long arc is going to bend in our direction.
Well, the
It's
craziness that's involved is pretty apparent, and I'm pretty sure, and we're not going to stand politics, that it's going to be mapped and dealt with very soon. It's
Yes,
not,
yes. I mean,
it
time
cannot
moves very
last long.
quickly now.
Yeah,
Things where this
yeah,
is going to move. It's a fire that's going to burn through.
yeah,
And I really am sending protection to our planet and
yeah,
to my
yeah.
trans
Well,
siblings and to
yeah, my
Black and
minister's
brown
gay.
people
My
and
minister is
human.
gay,
Yeah,
and what he married his husband Donald a few years back. It had been illegal,
yeah,
and then they made it legal. And when they made it legal, they got married. Well, now
yeah,
they made it illegal again. It's like, what?
yeah,
I mean, I don't know all states, but I think in
yeah,
Florida. But
yeah,
anyway, it's
yeah.
crazy.
It is.
So
It is.
I could see where your clients, you might have some clients that have a lot of angst about a lot of these things.
Oh,
And
yeah. I
let's
mean,
talk about,
I
and
have angst about it, but I am trying to hold the ground and hold the center and hold this
yeah,
steady.
just hold
Yeah.
space for it all to be okay. So some of the common challenges you face when you're working with your clients deal with spiritual trauma and religious abuse. And I was brought up Catholic, so I'm
Mhm.
right on this subject. I'm ready to hear.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you
I
have to
mean,
say?
I was raised Lutheran, and although it was um I don't know that I was a lot of my clients come from what I would consider very high on the continuum of exorcisms and public shaming and using volatile information or sensitive information in very publicly abusive ways, or of course sexual abuse by clergy, and um just the dark triad of narcissistic leadership that is not accountable and very Machiavellian. It's like top is knowing all, and any kind of dissent is disregarded. And so but from me, when I came out, my dad was actually asked to not participate in the church choir and the church band, which was where he
Yes,
really
what church?
found
What
it was
religion?
the Lutheran church.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Catholic adjacent, if you will.
So is Methodist.
Uh,
There's a couple. Yeah.
yeah. And so, I was a very spiritual person, but that really killed it for me. And, and I honor that there are certain, I think, lanes of Christianity that have evolved and come to some more, nuanced places. But I don't know that the church has really, as a collective, taken accountability for the damage that they have contributed to in terms of anti-queerness, anti-trans,
Yeah.
rhetoric, anti-women rhetoric. And, I would invite the church as a collective to take a look at that, because that is, I think people are really feeling that old shame-based religion is no longer in alignment for them.
No.
And
Mhm.
that, I think the church has to do a reckoning with that. So I really had to sort of claw my way. And I'm not a Christian identified spiritual practitioner. I love me some Jesus. Jesus is cool, but
Yeah.
often the rhetoric that comes out of Christian churches
Mhm.
just doesn't feel aligned for me.
We,
So,
the unique part of where I go to Unity of the Palm Beaches, is we talk about being Christ-centered, but we do not preach that Jesus was God's son. And
mm,
our minister says there's no big guy in the sky, which is unusual to
yeah,
hear that. But he
yeah.
says, no, you don't pray up and out. You pray in
I
and
love
out.
that. I
He's
love that.
wonderful. He's
I love
wonderful.
that.
And
Yeah,
a
and
lot of
even from a
people go there that are gay and alcoholic because it's so loving and so inclusive.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, it was always very just not aligned for me, even as a kid. I'm like, so the whole country of India, for example, is going to hell, according to
Oh,
you, or all of Native Americans
right.
are going to, that just doesn't, what God is so
News.
narcissistic
I got news for
that
you. I just found this out yesterday. The current Catholic Pope means,
yes,
did you hear it? That all religions lead to God.
I love that. Yeah. And
Thank you.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
I always
And
believe that.
right. And so I think we're really at a great turning when it comes to
Yes.
humanity, when
Mhm.
it comes to reclaiming collective collective spirituality, where we are not so focused on individualism and focused on perfection. I think a lot
Exactly.
of perfectionism, a
Yeah.
lot of optics are
Yeah.
often woven into sort of that old
Yeah.
school religion. And that I see as a collective trauma response
It
of stuff
is.
that just never got dealt with and then got
Yes.
projected through a
Well,
religious way.
for forever there was a patriarchy, and there was a I just lost the word, but it'll come to me. Um, in religion and in other aspects, if you weren't a
Sure.
man, a straight white man, you were nothing. And it took decades, centuries to
Hmm.
move the needle a little bit, you
Yeah.
know. And when that needle got moved, those people got scared. So we're
Yeah.
going to have to go through some stuff, but we're going to get through it. And
Yep.
whenever anything like this happens in humanity, there's going to be some bloodshed and pain and
Right.
angst, and
Yeah.
we'll be okay. I'm in therapy. I'm
Yeah.
in therapy.
Yeah.
I love my
Yeah.
therapist.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
talk to her every 2 weeks, and I'm like, Katie, I probably need to talk to you every day.
Yeah.
And she's
I
like,
know.
no, you're doing good.
And I
So
will say some of us are going to be okay. Some of us are going to be
yes.
okay, but some of us are going to be impacted and some of us are might die, like this really might cause
Well, they did die. I
people
mean,
to die.
people did die in
Yeah,
the 60s and the 50s. And
that's
yeah,
right. And
let's
so
hope we
I just
don't go
want to
that
name
far.
that. I don't want to
Yeah.
bypass that.
No,
That
we
that's
don't
a
want to.
reality.
Yeah, let's let that one out of our center here. So, okay, so we have this balance. needing the care for the trauma that we have s- endured.
Mhm.
And but we also want to reclaim our person. And I went through that. Oh God, I went to therapy 34 years ago, more than that. I tried to go to therapy when I was younger, but I was married and I was always trying to do couples counseling, and it wasn't working.
Of course.
You know,
Yeah.
they weren't participating. So when I did get sober, and I really did a lot of counseling, I did a 28-day rehab. And 9 months sober, I went away inpatient for eating disorder because I gained 50 pounds, which we know is called cross addiction. You put down one thing, you pick up another.
Right.
And 5 years sober, I went to the Caring Foundation for family of origin stuff because I was in a deep depression. And in between, always a counseling thing going on, whether it was group or one-on-one. And when I went away the third
Oh,
time,
thank you, baby.
my husband said, are you going to go away keep going away? Because I went away 3 times. And I said, I'm going to do whatever I have to do,
Yep.
because I had been at points in my life where there was suicidal attempts,
Mm.
half-hearted, maybe cry for help, but still suicidal
Sure.
tendencies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I went away 3 times.
Yeah. And and forgive me for like kind of dropping my book here, but like that's the I think we're always and already enough, lovable, worthy, and divinely connected, and we likely have work to do, right? Both
Yes.
of those things
Yes.
are simultaneously true at the same time. And there is no arriving. There is no healed land where you get on a plane and you arrive at done. We are always enough
Yeah.
and we are never done. And the second that we think we are done is the second we cause harm.
Right. You don't go past go and collect the $200 like the
Yeah,
Monopoly. You just don't.
that's right. We
I
have
mean, that's,
different, yeah,
I
different
finally,
layers coming
yeah.
up.
And life is life, and you never know what's going to happen, of course. And, I finally found the perfect fit for me, and I'm with him 37 years. And the first couple of years, we both drank, and that had to
Mm,
stop.
yeah,
We
yeah,
wouldn't still be together. But
yeah.
then he got Parkinson's 12 years ago.
Oh,
It's
I'm so
like,
sorry. That's so hard.
I
Yeah,
finally am happy, but
right,
okay, so that's what it is. And
right.
I'm his caretaker. And because of 2020 and being his caretaker and my chronic depression and anxiety, it came to a bubble, and I was getting depressed. And that's when I went back into therapy. And that is why I ended up writing a book,
Yeah.
and then a second book, and then a third book. And my fourth book just came out, and I have a
Awesome.
YouTube show and a podcast.
Badass all around. I love it.
I mean, the universe knows more than you do, you know.
Yeah,
So I could have sat in my rocking chair drinking, go relapsed,
yeah,
saying
totally.
poor me. No,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Alcohol,
yes.
alcohol is such a prison. I'm so
Oh,
grateful that it is
yes.
not in my life anymore.
No, I don't miss it at all. Um, Yeah, I sponsored a lot of people too, and I sponsored people that had other addictions and whatever your addiction is. And I also saw what people would call lost causes that today have 25 years that I sponsored, and people that were doing really well that relapsed and died. So it sort of depends. You don't know. You don't know who's going to make it. All right, so we talked about that. I think you're frozen, and that's okay because
I
I
hear you're
will
frozen.
talk until you come back.
Oh, I'm back. You're back.
Okay. All right.
I think
She's
you just
back.
froze.
She went on a little transcendent. So let's talk about your book.
Yeah.
You published a book. I just talked about my book, so let's talk about yours. Always Enough, Never Done. That's the short title.
I know I'm a wordy lady, Mimi.
Yes,
So my
so,
subtitle, it's its own chapter.
so
Go ahead with the
no,
subtitle. We'll be here for
you do. No,
20
you
minutes.
tell them the whole title. You would.
Let's see
Go
if let's see
ahead.
if I can remember it. So the subtitle is Heal Your Nervous System, Turn Wounds into Wisdom, and Cultivate Your Inner Badass.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
okay. That's fine. Um, I'm more of a wordsmith where I like the catchiness. So, Raised by Wolves, Trapped by Demons. When I tell somebody the name of the book, I have them already.
Yeah.
They love the name of the book, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how I write. And there's a lot of stuff I could talk about, but we're
Yeah.
not
I mean,
talking about.
always enough, never done feels that to me. Like I love
Yes,
that. I love that part of it. But
I love
I didn't
that part of the title too. Yeah.
I didn't think it really told people what we were doing in the book. And the subtitles just telling people what we're doing
Yeah, well,
in
mine
there.
was a memoir, so I
Yeah.
needed to
Yeah.
be a little mysterious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My memoir will be called Cosmic Mermaid, which is
I like that. So, talking about the book again, um, you
oh
walk us
darn it, you froze
through.
again.
No, you're good. You're good. You're fine. So, talking about the book, you walk us through a deep understanding of your nervous system and what might be blocking the most badass version of you. So, what do you mean by that? And if you're frozen,
Oh, I'm here again.
all right, you're back. I will edit this later. I'll edit this
Yeah, I'm
one.
so sorry. I don't know if
It's all
this is
right.
my internet. It says it's strong, so
Okay. Well,
I
that's
don't
okay.
know.
We're doing fine.
Yeah. Okay.
So we were talking about the badass version that we have that's being blocked because of things that you need to get through and get more of an
That's right.
understanding.
Yeah, yeah. So in the book, I structure the book as, just a little bit of psychoeducation about trauma, about big T trauma and little T trauma, which is more of that attachment trauma, kind of death by a thousand paper cuts type of trauma.
Oh, gotta say,
Um,
a chapter in my book is called Death by a Thousand Cuts.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's
So that was funny, but it fits in
that
it.
that takes its toll on us,
It
right? It might
does.
not be a big T event, but
Yeah.
it certainly does havoc on your nervous system, on your
Mhm.
attachment system. Um, and so I talk about that. And then I, just like I would with clients, I pack the book full of somatic exercises. I have a handout that goes with it that's like QR codes to me teaching polyvagal exercises, things that actually help tone your vagus nerve and tone your nervous system to slowly grow your nervous system's capacity over time.
Yeah.
So we talk about lots of resources, and then we talk about what I call descending path work, which is that down and in, looking at the shadow, looking at the trauma, looking at the pain, digesting work, composting work, walking through the center of the fire work, right? But
Yeah.
the purpose is not to torture you, it's to clean all of that out and repattern how it is stored in your brain. So that's that descending path work. And
Yeah.
then we talk about what I call the ascending path work, which
Right.
is that creative, like, who are you now? Who do you get to be? What are your values? What's your vision for who you are and what you want to be? And that's not a linear process, right? We got to do some shadow work, and then we go into some creativity work, and then we get a block and we got to do more work, descending path.
Yeah.
And
So
that's true for, so I ended up writing a 500-page book, but I have split it now into two books. So this is volume one. This is more of the individual work, the individual nervous system. Volume two is going to be more about relationships and the
mhm.
larger collective. And
Yeah.
I really wanted it to be one book because that's also a nonlinear process, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we have to do some individual work before we can engage with people in a different way and engage with the world in a different way. But then we're, of course, impacted and shaped by relationships and what's going on in the collective. And So that's another, kind of never ending infinity sign.
You
Um,
you keep catching me with phrases that I hear from my minister on Sundays. He always talks about the shadow self.
yeah, right. And we
I
all
mean,
have it. We
I know
all
it's
have
like
them.
it's I love the place. I found it when I moved here in Florida, and I had known about it because of Deepak Chopra, Marianne
Mhm.
Williamson, some of the great
Awesome. Yes,
New
I love that.
Age, writers of religion. And we were going up the steps, and my husband, who's like Irish Catholic, dyed in the wool, said, "Oh, we're going to hell." And
You're in the right place then.
I said, "No, you're not." And a lot of people in the beginning, they didn't like when he said that, Christ was an avatar and he was here to be an example, you
Yeah,
know. So that's how we talk about it in our church. And
I
Easter
love that.
Sunday's a hoot because
I bet.
he's not talking about, he was not, he's not giving you that Catholic or Lutheran version.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
love
you would
that.
like it. You
Yeah.
would like it. If you're ever in West Palm, stop by.
Okay, I will. I will. I
Um,
love that.
no, it's really great. And we have the best singer from Palm Beach County. We have all of them because well, we have oh the I can't think of the theater now. It's terrible. Anyway, we have this big theater that
That's
attracts
awesome.
a lot of entertainment and a lot of, people. And so we get these Broadway type singers that are so excellent. It's like this is like movie and a show. Like this is so or a dinner and a
That's fun.
show. We
That's great.
yeah. All right, back to the basics here. So, the most powerful therapeutic resources to help us. What would you say that is? I know what my answer is. Let me hear what your
Yeah.
answer.
Well, one I want to name that I think there's a different alchemy for everybody.
Mhm.
What something that works for one person might not necessarily work for everybody.
Yeah.
But I do believe that that there is something out there that can help everyone. And
Mhm.
we just have to find what's going to work for you.
Yeah.
But the magic combo that I use that I find to be the most helpful for most of the people that I work with is EMDR therapy, which I know you've just done a interview about. Um, Parts work, talking about the different parts of ourselves, maybe inner child parts, but also protective parts,
Mhm.
addictive parts,
Mhm.
and really learning how to work with those parts. So parts work. And in that is attachment work, attachment repair, learning how to be the adult self for all of these
Mhm.
parts, the attuned, compassionate, curious adult self for those parts. And then the somatic work, which is, bringing in the polyvagal work, toning the nervous system, really bringing in the healing powers of our bodies to be able to repattern these things, not just in this self-affirmation kind of way, but in this very physiological way where we really see a change in the way that the amygdala is lighting up before this
Yes.
work. And then
Yes.
much more activity in the frontal lobes, much more communication between the right and the left brain after something like EMDR. And then, again, I know you were curious about ketamine assisted
Oh
psychotherapy,
yeah, we
which
mentioned that.
of of course, we want to be mindful and careful with how we use medicine.
Mhm.
I always, set an intention before a medicine journey with someone that's like, we use this medicine with intention and respect and humility. But I will say that ketamine work for me personally is what I credit to actually being able to help me unhook from alcohol.
Mhm.
Um, and I
It's
totally
it's a
honor
sedative, right? It's a
it's
sedative type thing.
so it's actually in the category of a dissociative anesthetic,
Okay.
uh, but it can take on some psychedelic properties.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I'll just share my own personal journey. Like in one medicine session, it literally felt like my mom, who again, I don't have her genetic coding, but it felt like I was carrying her trauma in my body. And it felt like she was in that journey, being able to heal and address and process the sexual abuse that she didn't get to heal while she was alive in
Mm,
that journey. And since
mm,
then, I've been able to feel her energy around me more spiritually.
yeah.
And I've felt lighter and cleaner, and then in another medicine journey, it felt like I was able to get to my adoptive baby self. That even though I had done lots of EMDR and done lots of parts work and had attempted to, get that part of me back,
Mhm.
um, that work really allowed me to contact that abandoned baby self in a way that I hadn't really been able to do. And because what is happening when we have something like ketamine online is, if your system, which mine was slash is organized from birth, basically, around self-protection.
Mm,
Those neurological connections are so worn, like a well eroded path, right? And so if
yes.
those neurological connections are so fused together, sometimes it's very helpful to be able to have medicine that can actually, and this is what ketamine does, is it actually pauses that procedural network and allows a different synaptic connection to take
Mm,
place.
yeah.
And it really does. But don't get me wrong, this is not like, oh, I'm just going to put some ketamine in my system and everything's going to be magically fine. No, no, no. You have to do the work. You have to be able to look at the shadow, to go towards what is not so pretty about yourself and about what has happened, and
Yeah.
be able to integrate that. This
Yeah.
is not just like, I'm just going to go do some rails at a rave and I'm going to be magically cured, right?
Oh,
This is
no.
not
No.
that.
I'm
But
very, I'm very grateful because I've had all types of work done, and I needed to have it the way it happened because the 12-step work and the sobriety and the rehab, of course, I needed that first.
sure, sure.
I mean, I had to get my mind back. I had
Right.
been self-medicating for 20 years,
Yeah.
and I would have kept on doing it, except I had an accident and I was given pain medication and told do not take with
Mm,
alcohol, and knew that that didn't mean me. They weren't talking about me.
mm,
You know how egotistical we can be. And of course, I started having blackouts. I could have died.
yeah.
And I am a control freak, and I did not like people telling me what I did the night before that I did not remember.
Mm,
And then my depression deepened, and I knew I had to do something. And I went to a friend that was an addict, an alcoholic, and he was the best chiropractor in town. And he would drink while he was working on people. And
wow.
that he was so good, people knew it, they didn't care. And my bar, I owned a bar at the time, was right across the street. And you'll love this. His name was Dr. Bob. Now, anybody that knows AA knows who Dr. Bob is.
Uh-huh.
I didn't at the time. And he'd call me and say, Marie, bring me a drink and make it a good one. And he worked on my back and neck many times. So the day that I finally had enough and said out loud, God, please help me. I can't take this anymore. I was sitting in my car, got out of the car, and instead of going into my house, I went into his office. And we were such good friends. Like, it didn't matter if he was with somebody or whatever, the nurse knew. I need to see him now. And he said, okay. I said, what's that place that you go to? Because whenever you go there, you come back better. I had
Mm.
no clue. So they had me in the rehab that night, and I didn't know it. I thought I was going to a spa.
Oh, wow. That's
28
awesome.
days. So I found out right away it wasn't a spa, but I needed to be there. And the work they
Yeah.
did there was more about just getting me sober and getting my mind open enough that I could read the big book and understand what they were saying. And I was ready. You have
Yeah.
to be ready.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
yeah, and then when I went to California, they did, you know how California is, they did all that, stuff, that woohoo stuff that they do. And it was great. I mean, I loved it. And I did a lot of meditation and a lot of different things that they did then, and that helped. And then when I went to Karen Foundation and they did the family of origin work, oh my God,
Right.
they had to scream and you did this role playing. It was intense, intense.
Mm.
But I had
Yeah,
to
that's
be,
old school.
oh yeah. And they only take 5 people at a time for five
Wow.
days.
Okay.
And they would do a role play where that's going to be your father, she's going to be your mother. And they're doing this thing where they kept the person that was supposed to be me, a young girl, they kept putting pillows on top of her and more pillows. And I'm like, stop that. And like, I'm getting upset. And I noticed that I was backing it up into the wall. And I looked at my mother in the corner and she was crying. And the father was standing up on a chair yelling. It was like really brought up core, deep buried
Right.
emotions.
Yeah.
And there were a couple other things that were very intense. But in 5 days, man, they, they did some
Yeah.
good work. They did some
Yeah.
good work.
Yeah.
But every person's different and they need different types of therapy. And I think step number one is the awareness that you need help. And
Yeah.
step number two is finding that help.
Right. And you have my permission to keep looking until you find somebody that your nervous system actually feels some attunement with, because I have certainly had the experience of being in a therapist's office and feeling judged and feeling like I was doing something wrong, or feeling like that powered down old school kind of Freudian, you know,
I do know.
I'm not a real human. I'm just going to psychoanalyze you and judge you. And that is not my jam. I
No.
want equity. I want resonance. I want to empower you.
Were they
Um,
male? Counts? Were they male?
some of them, and but I had one female therapist who I started crying, and she goes, "Wow, you're really out of your window of tolerance." And I was like, No, you're out of your window of tolerance."
They're
um,
tears of healing. That's what that is.
yeah, I'm like, you can't cry in a therapist's office? That's
Oh my
very
gosh.
strange,
Well,
but
to relate this in another way, with doctors, with all my illnesses and everything, this year, I had a respiratory failure, came out of nowhere. Well, I know what it came from. It's from my autoimmune disease, but I wasn't expecting it. And I needed a pulmonologist. So the first pulmonologist I went to, and she was, reviewed as so wonderful. And she spent most of the appointment like I was on trial, and I had to prove to her why I thought I had Sjogren's syndrome, which is not why I was necessarily there. I was there to get a
right.
pulmonologist because with Sjogren's syndrome, it can get to your lungs. And I was afraid it was happening. So I thought, well, I'm not going. Oh, and I came in with a CAT scan that was taken 4 days beforehand in the emergency room, and she wanted me to get another CAT scan.
Mm,
So even my primary said, that's crazy, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So I
So,
went to somebody else. Wait, I went to somebody else. And he kind of like almost like went like this. Like he
mm,
just brushed me off.
mm,
I wasn't going back to him. So the third guy, and this is where the little joke comes in. I went to Cleveland Clinic and I went to this pulmonologist and he walks in and the first thing he says is, "Oh, I see that I'm your third pulmonologist this year." And I said, "Would you like to know why?" "Yes, I would." I
mhm,
said, "Well, they all failed that one course in medical school." And he said, "What course was that?" And I said, "Bedside manner."
mhm,
He said, "I hope you're going to keep me." I said, "I am. You know why? You already ordered 5 tests." They didn't even
yeah,
order tests. He
right,
ordered 5 tests. And
right.
he said, "I'm going to send you home immediately to get tested while you're sleeping." And my oxygen was dropping into the low 80s.
Wow,
So he
wow.
got, I sleep with oxygen right now until we figure out what's going on. Look at the difference. Now, the same thing goes whether it's physical
That's
medicine
right.
or medical,
That's
mental.
right. You have to find somebody that, you know, I'm not saying find somebody that's just going to like tell you you're great and not push you.
Yeah.
but you have to find somebody that your nervous system can feel some degree of safety with,
Right.
and that can gently invite you to your edge, right?
Yes.
That can gently and hold this space for you of
Yeah.
attunement and resonance, even as they're saying, can you peel back that veil there? Can you like look behind that
Yes.
spot that isn't so pretty to look at? And
Yes.
you know, the truth ain't always pretty, but it is beautiful because it is where liberation lives.
My therapist now, that's what she does. Like I'll be so thrilled. I'll say, oh, I did all my homework and I did this and I'm feeling good. And she goes, that's great. You did that. Oh, you set a boundary and that's wonderful. Well, can I ask you a question? What if they don't keep that boundary? How are you
Right.
going to react? Or how are you going to feel if this happens? Like she goes that extra, mile,
Yeah,
But I need
absolutely.
that. I need
That's
that.
right. That's
Well,
right. We
this
all
has
do.
been great. We could talk
Yeah,
for an hour. I like talking to you.
same,
We'll
same.
have to talk again about other things. Maybe your
Yeah.
book. I'll read after I read your book. You
Yeah.
know what? You read my book, I'll read yours, and then we'll
Deal.
we'll do a show just on the
A book. Oh, a
comparison.
book, like a book party or something. I
Yeah,
love
book
that.
club. I think it might be interesting because a lot of the stuff
Yeah,
you could,
I love
as a
that idea.
subject, I think I like that too. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
All
I
right.
hope our listeners love the show as much as we did. So, all of you out there, no matter what your problems may be or you think they may be, I think the message here was to open your eyes and look at them and find the right person that can help you with them. And
Yeah.
also that you have to do the work too.
You
All
do.
right.
And you know, this is another both and, if I may.
Go ahead.
Only you can do it,
Yeah.
and you can't do it alone. And so this, I think this book, and hopefully a pairing of this book, both Mimi's book and my book,
Yeah, that'd be
is
fun.
it's just like it's a alongside guide that can help you understand what's happening in your system, understand what is actually the path towards healing, which is nonlinear and messy. But dip your toes into the waters of you are always and already enough and lovable and worthy and divinely connected, and you've got some work to do. We
That's right.
all do. So get on in here. The water's fine.
Yep, do the work. Thanks again. All right, bye, everybody.